Deadline day, when it's traditional to get something long and stimulating put in your ear. And we've got that, as an international lineup of experts tackle the international break, the late transfer moves, and the Champions League. All your favourites back for this brand new season, with Chelsea facing Atletico and Roma, Spurs facing Real Madrid and Dortmund, Arsenal facing the television. We get the experts' tips and preview the Europa League. Just kidding. And we look through your always exciting questions in this Totally Football show. What a crowd! What a turnout! We've got James Horncastle.
Don't call me a crowd. Come on, James. It's not nice.
Hey, Rafa Honigstein, Bing, early leader
Hello.
in the yeah.
Banter
Stakes.
Yeah, I didn't want to use that word.
Yeah, I see.
Okay, so there's James Horncastle.
Hello.
And there's Rafa Honigstein.
Hello again.
Together at last. And Andy Brassell as well. Hi, Andy. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
It's brilliant. And it's great as well, because that means that we're here at Jazz FM. And we've got a bit of brass and horn. I worked hard on that one. Now, there's no Premier League or Championship football this weekend due to the international break. There is a bit of League 1 and 2, or lots of it, in fact. But perhaps most importantly, there's a game kicking off at 3 p.m. on Saturday at QPR's Loftus Road. The Game 4 Grenfell 4, number 4, yeah? Charity match, and indeed an entire day of activities raising money for the survivors in the wider community affected by the Grenfell fire. Loads of people are going to be involved in this. Les Ferdinand, Peter Crouch, Trevor Sinclair, Alan Shearer, Paul Merson, plus, and this is where it gets really interesting, Andy Brassell, people like Damien Lewis, Ollie Moores, Jarvis Cocker, Tiny Temper, Kasabian Serge Pizzuno, of course. They're all going to be involved as well. Tickets, if you want to get along, £15 for adults, £5 for kids. It is going to be shown on Sky One from 2 p.m, but well worth being there at QPR's Loftus Road this Saturday, the 2nd of September, kick-off at 3. If you want more details, head to game+4Grenfell.com, and you can show your support by using the hashtag Game4Grenfell. Best of luck to everyone involved in that this Saturday. Meantime, Rafa, you've been around in podcasting terms of late. How do you feel about life here at Jazz FM?
Oh, it's lovely.
Yeah?
I like the blue note of the wallpaper.
There you go.
I mean, it reminded me of a story that I researched for my Jürgen Klopp book, but didn't in the end write.
Okay.
There's this Austrian drummer called Martin Grubinger who had this grand theory that if you played music in certain rhythms during training, players would inherently take up that playing rhythm and do sort of things in the right rhythm. So he experimented with various musical genres like waltzer and samba and stuff. And that sounds bizarre. And Klopp was interested enough to sort of listen to his grand vision, but in the end decided that was just too weird.
Right. So the heavy metal football, that was never a literal thing?
It was never a literal thing, no.
Okay.
But
is this the reason with that band that play while England are playing? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, they would slow anybody down, wouldn't they?
Okay, but anyway, it's a really interesting thought, this. Are you saying that there was never any correlation then between upbeat performances and quite literally upbeat rhythmic performance?
Yeah, I mean, he wanted to actually coach a team and see if they would react favourably to certain rhythms, and if that were to speed up the playing style.
No one's ever given him the chance?
No one's ever given him a chance. But there's two things that come to mind. First of all, I remember Mehmet Scholl saying the music is always so bad at the warm-up in the Olympic Stadium. No wonder that we always have slow starts, because they used to play a lot of power ballads and this kind of stuff. And then he went to play at Man United, and Champions League said, "But they've got great music. No wonder, the team are up for it, and the crowd were up for it." And I think it got people thinking for the first time. And that was, 15, 20 years ago. The other thing that's interesting, if you want to groove on that jazz thing, James, is that Xabi Alonso once compared Real Madrid's football when they won a Champions League with him to rock and roll. Bam, 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 one note, maybe like Ramones. And he said Bayern's football under Pep Guardiola is more like jazz.
More like jazz.
Because, you just go...
Right.
So there you go. I think we've exhausted that line.
No, you've opened up a Pandora's box.
Okay, well, we're only here for another year, so...
Well, I hope we're here
the
for
studio.
longer.
Is this why Pep always wore the turtlenecks?
It's possible.
Well?
Right.
Possible, yeah.
That's remarkable, isn't it? It's a shame almost to leave that topic, but it's one I feel we will be returning to. I know listeners are going to write in with what kind of music they think England plays like now, or that kind of thing.
Well, Rigo Sacchi always used to talk about his teams in terms of music and always having he wanted them to perform like an orchestra, so come together. He didn't want soloists.
Right.
Yeah, so...
There you go. Andy Brassell?
Which is funny because Carlo Ancelotti is all about the duets, isn't he? From the end of last season with Anastasia.
No.
Although the thing that always struck me about that is when you see the picture of him on the balcony at the town hall with Anastasia, he's got his reading spectacles on, very much like Jimbo at the moment, and he's reading the words off a piece of paper, which kind of reminds me of Sean Ryder on Top of the Pops when he was at his absolute worst.
You mean when he sang Una Notte whatever?
I don't know. I missed all of this. Did he do that with Anastasia?
No, you saw that. We saw that on...
the European Football Show?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of...
that?
I've blanked that from my mind now.
What was it?
Una Notte Magica.
Right. If say Ericsson and Dele Alli were to do a reboot of Diamond Lights, then maybe that's... I don't know. Anyway, there's so much... I know you're going to write in about this, listeners, so I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. Well, we've got to move on now, because after this, we're talking about transfers. Right then. Well, a lot to talk about today, what with that Champions League and internationals, but let's start with a little bit of transfer news, because, of course, big clock is steadily ticking down on the transfer window. Among Wednesday's more remarkable stories is the fact that Renato Sanches to Swansea looks like being a reality. Paul Clement, former assistant manager to Ancelotti at Bayern, Rafa, I'm presuming that's why this is a thing?
Yeah, it is a thing. It is also a thing because some of the other clubs they were talking to insisted on an option to buy at the end of the loan deal, and Bayern didn't want that. They want him to play. They want him to get some experience. The Paul Clement connection makes it a little bit easier to keep tabs on him. Ancelotti didn't like him when he was at Bayern, but now is the time for him to get some game time, and I think Swansea have said, we're happy just to take him on loan and give it back to you. And that's what really clinched it.
Right, he barely featured in the Bundesliga, Andy. Why is everyone so excited about him?
Well, he just went too soon. It's just an obvious case of that, really. I mean, you're talking about a guy when he was 18 years old in his full season at Benfica. He played more outfield minutes than any other player at 18 years old and kept the level of his performance up all that time. And he didn't play the most outfield minutes by 20 minutes. He played it by sort of several hundred. So he was a key player for Benfica in that year. To go from that and the Euros to where we had a starring role, of course, to Bayern, I think was always going to be a little bit tricky. But I think this is a really good move just because of the guidance of Clement, as Rafa says, the fact that they've not got a purchase option on him. I think that's big for Bayern because Bayern have got a great option at the end of the year. Either they bring back a player who's absolutely at the top of his game, or if all going well, he's had a good season in the Premier League, they can sell him on at an enormous premium, having already proved himself in the appropriate market.
And it sounds a good move for Swansea as well. What's he going to do, sit in front of their defence?
No, I think he'll play box-to-box a little bit more because he's someone who... He started out as a winger, in fact. When he was in the youth team at Benfica, he played on both sides, and it was all about pace and scoring goals. But it was amazing when they put him in the centre of midfield. It was like he'd played there his whole life, having not played there that much during youth football. I think you look at his athleticism and energy, and he's got Premier League written all over him. So it's a really good place for him to get minutes and to prove his qualities.
West Brom, huge move, signing Paris Saint-Germain's Grigor Krychowiak. How close was I, Andy?
Spot on.
Really?
Yeah.
Out of PSG.
That Pinterest pause was worth it. There's no doubt about it.
Although previously he was a bit of a wow himself at Sevilla, no?
That's right.
Yeah,
and that was the funny thing that he went with Unai Emery, his coach, who went from Sevilla to Paris Saint-Germain as well, and it didn't happen for him at all. My theory on why this didn't happen for him, and it's indicative, I think, to an extent of the failure of Emery's methods, the fact that he's had to change more of himself for Paris than Paris have had to change themselves for him in a football sense. He was expected to be the player who the team was built around, and it didn't happen. Of course, they had a very strong midfield three anyway, but he wasn't really able to evolve Paris. And I think part of that is because, certainly under Laurent Blanc, very, very possession-based. Sevilla weren't that. Especially under Emery, they're very, very reactive. And, a lot of people have come out and said, well, pretty much any team in the Premier League could have done with Krychowiak, whereas I understand that opinion. It's not one that I entirely share, because he's someone who, there's so much to love about him. He's mobile, he's intelligent.
Could he head in set pieces?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's very important. I think, it sounds weird, but West Brom is the best fit for him, because I don't think he's quite elite level on the ball. And so when he was linked with Arsenal all those times, Arsenal have perhaps fallen a little bit from that stage, but I think, I think that has implications. It certainly had implications at Paris, where you've got to land all of your passes, and I don't think he was ever going to do that. Whereas obviously this isn't a big deal for West Brom at all. If he does the tackles and does the strongman stuff and organises the team, then bingo, they've done really well.
Strongman stuff. Yeah. Kieran Gibbs also joining the Baggies. Let's talk about Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, who we previously had heading on our big transfer map, little red dotted line towards Stamford Bridge. But he put the brakes on that, and instead, it's gone to Anfield. I suppose once you're a Southampton player, it's kind of in your DNA, isn't it? It's like a natural migration pattern.
Your destiny. Yeah. No, but I think it's curious, his choice here, because I think Chelsea obviously were very interested in him as well. But I think the Ox's motivation was that he didn't really see himself as being a right wing back, which is where he'd been playing for the last few months for Arsenal. It's obviously where Chelsea saw him as well, perhaps as an alternative to Victor Moses. Liverpool give him the opportunity to play where he wants to play.
Do you think they will?
Yeah, I think so.
So whose place in the team is he going to take?
I think he wants to play centrally. And yeah, I think, look, they're going to have a lot of games this season, unlike Arsenal. Well, it depends how far Arsenal go in the Europa League, of course. But I think he offers a good alternative. He's obviously a strong, powerful player, quick as well. Kind of fits a lot of the profile, and obviously that Klopp would like. And it's always a benefit to some extent to have an English player in your squad in the Premier League, in terms of just having it for that homegrown player rule, which you can have. So
right, some sort of coach comparison here, because I know no one in recent years has really accused Arsene Wenger of overcoaching, but I think with the best will in the world, you think it's actually quite a good deal, even in the current market and all that sort of stuff, for Oxlade-Chamberlain. It's a lot of money for someone who's not really been consistent at the top level for Arsenal in the whole time that he's there. If he finds that consistency, does that say a lot about Wenger?
I suppose it doesn't say a lot about... Well, I suppose it does say
You know what I mean,
yeah. For sure. Lots of people commenting on this.
Yeah,
Sorry, Rafa, you go.
You go on.
Okay, James
back.
Kavanagh says, where's he going to fit? 19 assists and 9 goals over the last 6 seasons. Big exclamation mark. Pathetic transfer, and he was poor last Saturday. James Kavanagh not very happy about that. James John Joseph, what after the 4-0 drubbing on Sunday leads Klopp to believe that the Ox is a £40 million midfielder? Jerry Arthurs, Jimbo, will he be using some play on oxymoron to pun on this transfer? Rafa.
Well, I know that Klopp loves the Ox, and they feel that there is a real great player in there who's been hiding, or perhaps not being able to come through that mediocrity that surrounds him at Arsenal, and that lack of coaching that Andy hinted at has held him back. I mean, talking to an unnamed senior player at Arsenal, I do get the sense that he would have benefited greatly from somebody who just says, listen, don't do this. Don't, for example, try to do something special all the time. He had this tendency, or has this tendency, to do something really extraordinary and then think the next 2, 3, 4 touches also have to be really special. Of course, you don't play the game like that. You need to pick your spots for the imaginative stuff, and then most of the time you just provide a solution for what's needed in the moment. Simple things like that don't sound too difficult really to convey, but perhaps weren't really done at Arsenal. Somebody just sits him down and says, just do the simple stuff. And I think he's got all the attributes and all the natural talent to be a real star. And I think he himself, and I believe he's well advised from his environment and his family, believe that it's now time for him to grow, and he obviously felt that Arsenal wasn't the right place for it.
All right, so it's a thumbs up for this move from you as well.
Thumbs up from me.
Okay. What do you make of... you must be tired of talking about this, various different studios and back gardens around the country, but Naby Keita and his next season move, that's locked down. There's no way that's not going to happen. He's going to go next season from RB Leipzig to Liverpool.
Yes, he is. Liverpool have paid a premium to be allowed to exercise a release clause that's not exercisable right now, because it only kicks in next summer. But they've gone to Leipzig and said, we want to do the deal now. Leipzig have agreed. For them, it's great because they get £20 million and keep the player on top of the release clause money that they would have necessarily received next season, because there was no way he was going to renew his contract.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess in today's crazy market, 70 million euros stroke pounds still represents a reasonable value, as crazy as it sounds. So it's a good deal, and I think it reflects Liverpool's A, determination, and B, also efforts in tying this down. They've laid so much of the groundwork, then only to see the player then go to somebody else would have been, I think, silly. So it's a smart move, and I think increasingly it could be the way forward. A lot of these type of moves, even though not always official, are done in the Bundesliga, where teams really take an interest well in advance of their contract being run down or release costs coming in, and telling them, you know what, come to us. As I said, it's not strictly legal in most cases, but it's being done, and I think it's a much smarter way of doing business rather than scrambling around on the last day of the transfer window.
Who knows what's going to happen in the next 12 months, but where would you see Keita lining up in Liverpool the season after this one?
Well, he'll be another of those holding midfielders. I don't know if it says something about Emre Can, maybe. I think he's the one player that, with his contract coming to an end, and we haven't heard or seen any movement on that.
Well, a lot of talk of Juventus being in for him.
Yeah.
Juventus see him as a real opportunity, because they love nothing more than doing what Rafa says, really, is getting in there early, waiting for a player to run that contract down and then take him for free. We've seen it so many times with Juve.
I think it's the funny thing, isn't it, with Liverpool in the opening weeks of the season, when Emre Can has been absolutely outstanding, you have to say. The freedom that he's had in the final third of the pitch, I mean, it's been great to see. But on the other hand, you think with the superior technical skills that Naby Keita has got, what would he be able to do in a similar role?
Bit of a German colony emerging at Juventus now, with
like
Benedict,
South America or something.
Benedict Hövedes joining Sami Khedira there, maybe. See Chan. Obviously,
Well, let's talk. Go on then, because I was going to ask about one or two other deals that might have, but Juve have snapped up Benedict Hövedes from Schalke. Is this a really smart move, Rafa? That was a big issue for them, how strong they were at the back after the departure of Bonucci.
I don't think he's quite Bonucci material. He's very solid. He's a real leader, super dependable, great in the air. On the ball, that's where the rumours, the whispers are. There's a bit of spin, but that's why one of the reasons why Schalke wanted to sell him, because the new coach there, Domenico Tedesco, said, I can't have a centre-back who isn't comfortable on the ball. And there was even a suggestion that some of his back passes to the keeper weren't very good.
Juventus haven't signed him to be Bonucci. They've said, we're not looking to replace Bonucci because there is only one Bonucci. And I think they're looking at playmaking in other areas of the pitch. I think they're just looking for their defenders to defend now. And I think what Hövedes does really well is he's versatile. He can play across the defensive line, a back three or a back four. So
also, I remember when Perisic went to Inter, you were very much, he won't play. Look what a success he's been.
No, I didn't say he wouldn't play. I just think I don't see what the fuss is all about.
There was nothing in what he'd done at Dortmund or Wolfsburg to intimate that he would go on to do what he has done at Inter.
Fair enough. Listeners, more transfers. Roma, they've only gone and sealed the deal for the very exciting Schick. And not only have they done that, but they release what's got to be the ultimate transfer announcement video. It's sort of a best of.
Yeah.
It's a kind of cut together of the various transfer announcement memes. There's a bit of there's a goat playing chess obviously.
Which apparently is Monchi. He's just playing the game. He's the greatest of all time at playing the game.
Okay,
yeah.
So that's what that is. The monkey bit, what's that?
The monkey bit is apparently fans clicking refresh for transfer news about replacing Mohamed Salah.
Of course.
Yep.
What respect for your fan base is there?
What about the lion singing? That confused me.
The line apparently is Schick calling to go to Roma and roaring proud at this link as well.
All right. And what I really respect is that the only explicit reference to Schick in it is when they Photoshop his name onto Francesco Totti pulling a ball out in the Champions League draw, and when he pulls out Barcelona for Juve and has a bit of a titter about the fact that Juventus is going to be playing Barcelona, they've actually put Patrick Schick, so now he's having a bit of a giggle about that. That's exciting, though. If you're a Giallorossi fan, listener, that's exciting.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people wondering, where does he fit in, because he doesn't
Wherever he wants.
Play on the right. Well, exactly, and that's what Monchi said. You can never have enough good players. It doesn't matter where he's going to fit in. We'll find a way. We might actually see going forward Florenzi when he's back play in that Salah position and Schick complement Dzeko up front.
All right, listeners, you're eager to hear about internationals, but before we get there, because it is transfer deadline day, one or two things still out there. Potentially some sort of resolution for Diego Costa, Virgil van Dijk, and that long-awaited move possibly north to Anfield. What's going to happen with Coutinho, Ross Barkley, Thomas Lemar, Draxler? And what is happening with Alexis Sanches and Riyad Mahrez? Were Algeria trolling the transfer market people worldwide when they said that he'd been given time off from the Algerian training camp to formalise his move to his new club?
Well, I suppose the difference between that and the situation with Lemar is France are playing later, which sort of puts a bit of a spanner in the works, really. With Mahrez, I feel that of all the people who've been at the centre of this sort of speculation this summer, he's dealt with it better than anyone. He's stayed in the team, not said anything publicly, and played really well as well. So I think that's something that speaks a lot to potential employers, even if going on strike or whatever wouldn't necessarily put off a buying club these days. But yeah, I think there's still something there for Mahrez in the last day. And we have to say as well, Spain, their transfer window doesn't close until Friday night.
Right. You think he's heading to Spain, Mahrez?
Well,
Barcelona?
You never know. It's a possibility. It's really hard to second-guess Barcelona because there's clearly no straight-line thinking in what they're doing. But they could still end up with a pretty decent window.
OK, so we'll move on from Mahrez and let's just have a word on Alexis Sanches. I know we don't actually know because it's closing tonight in this country, but where do you think? Do you think he's going to move? Is he going to stay there? Will Man City offer enough? What do you think, James?
I think...
Quick, because
I think it'll happen.
Yeah?
Yeah.
To Man City?
Yeah.
All right. And here's one more, and listeners are getting a little bit fidgety. So who do you think is the worst transfer of the summer, says JJ Nesbitt?
I don't know about
Andy.
the worst transfer, but worst transfer window. I find it extraordinary that West Ham say they've got their top targets. They've done nothing to change the dynamic of the team. I know it's easy to say after they've lost 3 in a row.
Wow,
but
Arnautovic is amazing.
I would have thought that had you said at the start of the window they'll get in a guaranteed goal scorer, England's number one in goal, and a creative player in midfield, and a very highly respected defender.
I know the answer to this. Joe Hart.
Joe Hart.
Worst signing.
The fact that what they needed is energy, impetus, leadership.
Yeah.
I don't think they got any of that in exchange for quite a lot of money.
A lot of people feel that the change they needed to make...
Where's the future?
Yeah. But maybe the change they needed to make wasn't on the field. OK, we're down on West Ham, down on the causes of West Ham today. We're back with international talk after this. Listeners, like a stat, have a go on this one. 81% of men who try the Cornerstone razor don't go back to their old one. I know. Find out more and get £10 off your first order and free delivery too at cornerstone.co.uk/totally. Internationals, everybody. Here we go. Some big games out there. What game are you most excited about? England, obviously. Before they host Slovakia at Wembley, they're going to be away at Malta. Some say there's no danger, but I fractured a toe there.
How did you do that, James?
It was in a swimming pool, actually.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was. What it was is they had a kind of bijou kind of like... It was as if it had been hewn from the living rock. So it wasn't a smooth wall. There were outcrops. Just swung my foot unconsciously and caught an outcrop. And yeah.
Painful?
Well, of course it was, but yeah. And the thing is, there's nothing you can do for a fractured toe. You just have to let it heal as best it can. In exciting England news, you got the fact that the winning mentality that Southgate wants to instill has been reinforced this week by a 7-minute film about what it takes to win. And this has been shown to every player called into the squad. It includes his penalty miss in Euro 96.
Yeah.
Do you know anything else about his How to Win video?
I don't know, probably just look at the under-20s or something like that.
Oh, yeah, that's a good shout. Also, the FA, Rafa, have signed a memorandum of understanding with world champions Germany to exchange a range of ideas about big tournament preparations. What can the Germans learn from us? Rafa?
I'm not sure.
Okay. What can we learn from the Germans?
Everything.
I bet it's knitwear. That's where I would start. The squad, Harry Maguire could start. Jack Butland, expected to be number 1, not sure. Could get first cap for Nate Chalabar. Loads of things we can find out. Will Harry Kane be the captain, etc.? That's all very exciting. That's on Friday. They're away to Malta. Scotland, by the way, are away to Lithuania and then home to Malta on Monday. If they win both those games, they could go second in the group. But we'll talk about that on Monday. Northern Ireland is second, I think. Is that right, Rafa, in Germany's group? Did you know that Will Griggs is no longer...
I was aware.
Will Griggs been
that.
fired?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's been put out.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. Germany have picked themselves up very well from the disappointment of the Euros, I think, Rafa. Well, you top of the group, you've played 6, you won 6, scored 27. How many have you conceded?
None.
1. You conceded a goal.
Your B team wins the Confederations Cup.
Yeah.
that was probably the under-21 first team, and the under-21 B team won the Euros. So, quite a good summer for the Germans.
All right. But Rafa wants to talk about France against the Netherlands.
Well, it's the glamour tie.
I don't know that it is. No. It's one of two. Yes. It's one of two. France and Netherlands, because these two teams are currently trailing Sweden in Group A, and they're meeting this Thursday evening. So, effectively, I wonder how that went. It's a big game, no denying it.
Deschamps is quite the lucky manager because...
is he?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. He has an embarrassment of riches, but it's quite the headache for him. Because...
Well, you did a tweet this week about the collective value of French internationals who've moved this summer. If you would extend that to the whole squad, I mean, what kind of figure would we be talking? It's got to be the most valuable squad in world football.
Well, this summer, I think 391 million euros has been spent on French players, elite French players. And if you go back last summer, obviously Paul Pogba cost 105 million. Before that, Anthony Martial cost 60, 70, depending on who you believe in terms of add-ons. This is, I would say, the golden generation term has never been more appropriate maybe for this team because they clearly are having these kind of French players. They're worth their weight in gold, I suppose.
Right.
I suppose the other...
Much more than that.
Oh, much more, yeah.
The other side of it, though, is the fact that they're on such a positive dynamic, obviously not after losing the game in Sweden late on, but after winning the friendly against England, especially with 10 men. Mbappe and Dembélé were outstanding in that, and Mbappe's not played and been training on and off because of what's been going on with his transfer. Dembele's not even in the squad because he wasn't training at all because of his transfer. So they haven't been able to build on that positive dynamic. And it had already been tricky for Deschamps. You talked about maybe him having too much choice. Well, he was completely faithful to the players that he picked in the Euros. That's right, including Moussa Sissoko. And then they went and lost in Sweden. That last-minute goal for Sweden, that freak goal after the mistake by Hugo Lloris that Ola Toivonen scored, it was almost a bit of positive impetus, really, for France because, of course, it inconvenienced them in terms of Sweden going top of the group. Although I think most people still think France will go on and win the group. But it was just that it changed it from being a nice away point to something we have to discuss nationally. So why isn't Lamar in the team? Why isn't Dembélé in the team? Why isn't Mbappe in the team? Whereas if it was a point, everyone would have sucked it up. So Deschamps was forced to evolve things a bit. And that's his biggest challenge in the next year, getting those exciting young players a place in the first 11, integrating them with the players he trusts, where ideally, well, he's still enormously important to them, of course. And, you sort of, it's difficult because you would like to think that if you're a genuine contender for the World Cup, you would at least have an idea of 80% of your first 11 a year from the tournament. I'm not really sure if that's the case for France. On the other hand, do
you need to know you're 80% of your first 11 a year from the tournament?
It would be nice. It's not essential, but I think it would be nice. I mean, maybe if it's all brought together a bit more last minute, maybe that'll give them a bit of spontaneity that will give them a bit more buzz. I do think this fixture in particular, though, is very, very difficult for the Netherlands. That late goal, I think the main loser, apart from Moussa Sissoko, with that late goal in Sweden, will be the Netherlands, because it just means that the French have to go for this hell for leather now. They can't muck about. They haven't got any more snookers, any more jokers to grill, as they say. 3
big teams there fighting for 1.5 qualifying places, effectively, because second place, if it's a good record, will get you into the playoffs. And an interesting position thusly for Spain and Italy, who are level on 16 points in Group G. Spain, though, with a better goal difference, and they face each other on Saturday in Madrid.
Yeah, at the Bernabeu. I think this is, I would say, the tie of the international weekend. It's going to be difficult for Italy, even though obviously we saw them in the Euros do ever so well against Spain, knock them out, playing a system that Spain have always kind of found to be very awkward to play against. It was quite curious when they played in Turin in October that Ventura kind of stamp his mark on the team, played his own system, which was like a 4-2-4. Spain dominated possession. We're quite lucky to go in front. I didn't really create anything. It was a Buffon mistake that allowed Vitolo in. But they changed the system in the final 20 minutes and caused Spain a lot of problems and got back into the game. They changed to a 3-4-2-1. And I think it's no coincidence that they've been practicing that system all week in training. The BBC's back together. Obviously, Bonucci will be playing with Barzagli and Chiellini for the first time since he's left Juventus for Milan. There's all kinds of little plots all over the place. Suso, who's obviously been brilliant for Milan. Goal and assist in each of his 2 games for them in the squad for the first time. David Villa back.
That's interesting, isn't it? After 3 years now.
Yeah, and that's led to a debate in Italy about Sebastian Giovinco. Giovinco's had a fantastic time in MLS, but keeps getting ignored, whereas David Villa has been brought back into the side. I think it's quite interesting what's going on up front with Spain, because obviously Conte, previous Italy manager, sent that text to Diego Costa. Costa's obviously AWOL in Brazil, but Conte's new striker, Alvaro Morata, has started very well at Chelsea and probably will be starting up front against his former Juventus teammates. So it's going to be a really...
almost too many plot lines.
Too many plot lines. It's exciting, yeah.
Yeah, I'm dizzy. Giovinco, 63 goals in 97 games for Toronto, and his agent says it's absurd that he's not being considered for the Azzurri. I'm not sure.
No, I think he's a gadget player. I think he's someone who, when they're given lots of license to roam, lots of space, games not played at a big tempo, naturally that talent we all know he has comes to the fore. But when the game is played at the highest level, I think he struggles to really get going and do what he's best at.
He was good in the under-21s, though, to be fair.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, that's lots of international news. They're doing it in South America too, Andy. You'll probably recall that Brazil are looking pretty much home free at the top of that group. Behind them, you've got 4 teams with only 2 points between them: Colombia, Uruguay, Chile, and then Argentina, who are in 5th place. Thus, potentially staring down the barrel of a very easy-to-win fixture against the winner of the Oceania group. They are on their 3rd manager of the campaign, Jorge Sampaoli.
Proper manager.
But finally the one they wanted.
Oh,
exactly.
Right, did you see his comments about Higuain?
Yeah.
Higuain's a limited player because he has no assists in him, and that's why he's been left out.
Assist in the Champions League final. I mean, admittedly, it was just a heavy touch of an assist, but still.
Yeah.
Right.
Icardi definitely has added to that to his game in the last 18 months. I think it was at one stage last season he had more assists, the most assists of any forward in Europe's top 5 leagues,
really?
Particularly because of his compatibility with Ivan Perisic, Rafa's best friend.
Yeah.
But it looks going to be really exciting that Icardi, his international exile has been ended, and he's back into the squad. He was brought back in for the friendlies in the summer, but got injured. But it looks like it'll be Messi, Dybala and Icardi all playing together, which is pretty exciting.
Well, you were talking about how sexy the French squad is. And the forward options for Argentina remain ridiculous. Messi, Dybala, Aguero, Correa, of course, in the squad. Higuain not even called up. Icardi. Boom. Have some of that. All right, let's play you some music, listener. And then, how about we talk Champions League?
Tweet us at The Totally Show and find us on Facebook and at thetotallyfootballshow.com.
Listeners, if you were excited about our chat about music and football earlier on, we've got a little update for you. The song that Carlo Ancelotti was singing on the balcony wasn't anything about Notte Magiche.
No, it was I milioni anni della nostra vita. There you go.
Remarkably, James sounds better.
James got quite a set of pipes on him there. Yeah.
Apologise to the listeners for that.
No. I want to talk Champions League. Boy, do I want to talk at Champions League, because since last Thursday's show, they went and did the draw for
Totti and Shevchenko did it.
They did, didn't they?
Yeah. Sheva is the ambassador for the final because it's going to be in Kiev this year.
Oh,
yeah.
How about that? I like to play hostage to fortune.
Okay.
Let's get some quick-fire answers about who's going to do what. And this is going to feature a little bit of Julien Laurens, who was with us on Monday. Play that music, producer Ben. And let me ask you, first of all, who's going to win the Champions League, James Horncastle?
Real Madrid.
Rafa?
Real Madrid.
Andy Brassell?
Real Madrid.
And from Julien Laurens?
PSG.
Champions League surprise team. Coming back to you later on that, Jules. Who's going to be the big surprise? Andy Brassell?
Benfica.
Really? Rafa Honigstein?
Liverpool.
James?
Leipzig.
And Julien Laurens?
RB Leipzig.
Who's going to be the big flop, James?
Barcelona.
Rafa?
Barcelona.
Ooh, Andy. Julien Laurens?
Manchester City.
Andy Brassell?
Roma or Atletico.
What are you eating, by the way? Quickfire round's the wrong time to try and sneak a mouthful. Roma and Atletico, anyway, the big flops. And the breakthrough player, I'll come to you later. James.
Pulisic.
Rafa?
Timo Werner.
Oh, nice. Andy?
Bruma of Leipzig.
Oh, that's a
He's
new
just
Bruma.
arrived from Galatasaray.
It's a new Bruma. See you, sweeper. And Julien Laurens?
Asensio.
Is he not already a little bit broken through?
Well,
okay.
the thing.
Right, well, that was fascinating, I think. But I wonder if I can ask your motivation. First of all, there doesn't seem to be any doubt that Real Madrid are going to three-peat. We saw quite a bit of Real Madrid looking very shaky indeed during last season. Does that not give you any cause for concern?
They always do. I mean, they win games when they play well. They win games when they don't play well.
They're so good they don't really have to play until the semi-finals. That's the thing.
I think the two things with Real Madrid is A, that they feel like they have more of a plan than anyone else. There seems like genuine continuity, and Zidane has it all in hand. And B, the other thing that I think might play in their favour is Cristiano Ronaldo's ridiculous, as he says, suspension at the start of the season, which means just as last season, he's not really going to start his season until September. And that really worked for him last season. And he was stronger than he's been in 4 or 5 years in the money part of the campaign. So if that's the case again, well, they'll be flying, won't they?
All right. In Group H alongside Real Madrid, of course, you got Spurs. James?
I think this couldn't really have gone much worse for Spurs. This group.
With the rest of the group being Borussia Dortmund and Apple Nicosia.
Yeah, I mean, aside from Apoel, I think it's pretty tough for them. Gareth Bale will maybe be playing against them. I mean, we don't know because Isco really came into the fore in his absence at the end of last season. Asensio has just been unbelievable. So I think, if I hadn't gone for Barcelona as my flop, I would say Spurs.
Andy, you went Roma or Atletico?
Yes, because I just feel Roma are so unfinished, and I feel they're a long way back from where they were last season. Why I caveated that with Atletico, I don't think Atletico will get much further than the last 16.
Why?
This season. I just feel that, and I know it's maybe an obvious thing to say because, of course, they haven't been able to make any transfers, but even with the fact that they'll be able to make transfers in January with Vitolo coming in and possibly Diego Costa as well, I just feel that they're just a tiny bit one-paced, and I wonder if they'll get found out. I mean, I would love to see them go on and win the Champions League because they've contributed so much to it in recent years, and I always find them a really compelling watch. And I find it weird that people think, just because they don't play necessarily aesthetically beautiful football, that doesn't mean they're good to watch. They're good to watch in a very different way. It's a really consuming experience. But yeah, I just wonder if they've run out of tricks and run out of gears.
Rafa, you and James both said Barcelona is your big flops. That's based on...
Well, it's based on losing their at least second best player, possibly the best player this season, and having a chaotic transfer window. And even before the whole Neymar thing, I think a sense that Barcelona are a little bit adrift, having lost their way a little bit, and not yet convinced that the new manager, Valverde, will sort it out. So I think they will be underachievers yet again.
All right. Andy, what do you think?
Valverde's got an enormous job on his hands. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But because of all the fuss from upstairs, we've not really seen what he can do yet. At least he's got a start with those 2 wins out of 2, even if they were really humiliated in the Super Cup. And one thing I would say in their defence is that they have at least addressed the areas in the transfer market, the areas of the team that they needed to. They have a proper right back now in Nelson Semedo, who's excellent, and they didn't have a proper right back all last season after Dani Alves went. They've brought in someone in midfield, which they needed to, in Paulinho, and I've only ever really seen him play at any sort of length for Spurs. I don't really think you can judge him on that. I hear from people I know who follow Brazil closely that he's been excellent for Brazil. And I have faith in Dembele to affect games at the top level, even though you can't say he's quite at the same level as Neymar at the moment. So I'm not convinced it's quite as disastrous a spell for Barcelona as other people think. Clearly, they're not going to have any problems getting out of this group. Getting any further, well, that was a problem that they'd had for a number of years anyway. So
right.
I'm not sure they're going to necessarily fall shorter of that, even if I wouldn't exactly back them to go on and win the trophy.
All right, alongside them in this group, Olympiacos, Sporting. How dangerous are they, Andy? Sporting?
They've got another really tough draw because last year they had Borussia Dortmund and Real Madrid, and by losing to Legia Warsaw on the final day, they managed to end up losing. They've had a really good start to the season. They've brought in some quality in terms of especially Bruno Fernandes in midfield, who's been excellent so far. Maybe they can make it a little difficult. I think third place is the most realistic place they should be looking at. And also, the thing always is with Jorge Jesus, and he's not won the league yet at Sporting, he will always rest players in European competitions and give preference to the league, which is a very not modern thing to do. But if they're going well in the league, I think there's a choice that he will make between League and Champions League will always be second priority.
All right. Loads of people like Jim at Barca Jim saying, dull though it may be, what British club is best placed to go furthest in the Champions League?
I think Liverpool, because they've got a couple of changes of key. It's not just about the pace that they've got going forward, but they can let teams come onto them as well.
And Rafa's big on Liverpool as well, James?
I was going to say that, but I'll say City.
No, you can say the same one if that's what you think.
Well, I think...
I mean, it depends a lot on the draw, really. I mean, you can get a last 16 draw that's very favourable.
Right.
And then, you're through to the last 8, and the better side might get knocked out by a much better team. So
Liverpool's draw, a lot of people have said looks quite favourable. They've got Spartak Moscow, Sevilla, who else?
Maribor.
Oh, and Maribor, of course.
Always tricky.
Man United have also got a Muscovite opponent in CSKA in their group, Benfica, Basel and CSKA Moscow. A lot of people saying it's like they're still in the Europa League. But anyway, earlier this week, we spoke to Sasha Goryunov to find out how much of a threat the Russian teams will be offering.
CSKA have had a difficult summer. Again, they haven't bought anybody. As you know, Lenis Lusky left over Christmas. It's basically same old. Spent on the money on the new stadium. But they have changed the system since Lenis Lusky left. After years of 4-2-3-1, they've gone to 3-5-2. However, really no new players. You have Van Blom in the central midfield still kicking people, and Golovin and Zagoyev are probably the main sources of creativity in the side. Golovin created a very nice equalizer against Spartak Moscow a couple of weeks ago in the Moscow derby, which CSKA went on to win. But overall, you get the sense of not stagnation, but the club isn't really moving anywhere. And also the CSKA Arena, the new home stadium, hasn't really proved to be the crowd puller that the club officials have hoped for. I mean, the team is averaging about 15,000 at home, but they already lost 3 home league games this season.
And what about Spartak?
Well, Spartak, after the highs of May, after unexpectedly, to be honest, winning the league, the whole promotion of Carrera to manager, again, been almost purely accidental. The come down has been very difficult. Nelly Zmailov, the vice president of the club, who has been, mostly responsible for building the new stadium that Spartak have now, tried his hand at transfers, and he hasn't been great. So far, Spartak Moscow have only really ended up with one decent signing, which is the loanee from Chelsea, Mario Pasalic. He's been playing in midfield. However, the general unity that Spartak had last season, sort of the sense of purpose and, perhaps a bit of a sense of destiny, has disappeared over the summer. So the performances have been lacking really, energy and effort and disorganized at the back. The team has conceded 13 goals in 9 league games in Russia, which is quite a lot, second worst defense. So overall, the picture has been lost. They went to Zenit, who spent freely this summer, buying loads of Argentinians and nicking half the Rostov squad. They went to Zenit and they got battered 5-1. Rebrov, the goalkeeper, ended up dropping the ball into his own net towards the end of the match. So it was a complete disaster. Then they went on to lose the derby at CSKA. They also managed to blow a 2-goal lead against Lokomotiv. So this lack of focus has really, really undermined them. But I think at the moment they're just trying to rediscover that sense of balance that they had last season, which has been completely lost.
Sasha, looking at my diary, Liverpool and United are both going to be in Moscow in the last week of September. That sounds like it could be a bit troublesome.
Certainly raised eyebrows on the Russian side. I mean, who on earth agreed to this? Perhaps this is a challenge, for the security system ahead of next year's World Cup. There is no worry of trouble from the Russian side because I think the whole thing is going to be quite closely watched and heavily policed. The jokes at the moment are being made that, Liverpool and United fans are turning up in Moscow to make, long-awaited improvements to the city landscape. But certainly any trouble, I think, from between the English sides, should there be any between the fans of the sides, will be, I think, jumped on by the Russian press. But to be honest, looking at the contingent that travel to these faraway destinations from England, on the Liverpool side as well as Manchester United, I think it's going to be the older, sort of more mature guys. So I think any likelihood of trouble is very, very low.
Sasha Goryunov, looking forward to having him here with us soon enough. All right, so Liverpool are going to do well. Man United, a favourable looking group. What about Chelsea?
I think Chelsea should be comfortable winners of this group. As I've said, I think I've got slight doubts over Atletico and how much quiet is left with them, even though I would expect the 2 games between Chelsea and Atletico to be quite intense. Again, you can't really tell about going on in terms of what the draw will be and stuff, but I don't know. I don't feel they're immensely stronger in a squad sense than last year because they've lost a couple of players, Matic and Costa, and yeah, I know there's reasons behind it and all the rest of it. It feels like the players who have come in, who should have come in to supplement the squad, have come in as replacements instead.
So you don't think they've got the depth squad to handle Premier League and Champions League?
I'm not convinced they do, and I think especially when you look at Conte and his famous inability to step off, I wonder if there's a point where the players get a little bit exhausted. I mean, he didn't have great Champions League success at Juventus either. I think you look at this, and if Chelsea are going to go a long way in the Champions League, I don't think they'll win the league. And if they do win the league, I don't think they'll do great in the Champions League.
Fair enough.
It's a bit harsh, this talk of Conte not being able to do it in Europe, because first year at Juventus they weren't in Europe. Second year they won the group. Chelsea were in that group. They were champions at that stage. They won, and they went through as the first in that group. They then played Celtic, but they played Bayern in the quarterfinals, and Bayern won the treble that year.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you then look in the second year, they go out in the group stages, but I think a lot of people at Juventus would credit them going to the final of the Champions League the following year and getting to the semi-finals of the Europa League the previous year, because it taught them how to go deep in these kind of competitions. So, and we also saw how well he can game plan in the Euros as well, where, I mean, they were quite unlucky to go out against the Germans. So I think he's a good knockout manager, Conte.
Interesting. Well, a couple of other things. One, Man City. Is this the year, Pep, in his second season, is this the year they finally crack it?
I mean, with the ball, they are absolutely amazing and they will create a lot of problems. But there is this defensive problem, which not so much down to, I think, to the quality necessarily at the back, but the ability to prevent counterattacks, the positioning in midfield, what we in Germany call Restverteidigung, where those players who are not involved in an attack position themselves in the right space to prevent in anticipation of the counterattack. And I think there's a lot of work still to be done.
With that word again, Rafa?
Restverteidigung.
What does that mean?
Well, rest is like the leftover. So
Okay.
the kind of the leftover defense.
Okay.
And I, for example, I mean, I have grave reservations whether Vincent Kompany is ever really the right player for that kind of system that doesn't give you a lot of protection and demands a lot of anticipation. And I'm not so sure, but I mean, they should be better than last year, and they can't be as open as they were against Monaco.
The tie of probably the group stage will be Manchester City against Napoli, because I think Napoli don't have the individuals that City have, but I think they play as a team, kind of what I think Pep would like his team to play like.
Right.
That's
well,
what I think.
Chiki Begiristain says Napoli play the best football in Europe. And I'm quite surprised you didn't nominate them for your surprises, but maybe you think everybody knows about them.
Yeah,
by now.
exactly. I think they could be this year's Monaco. I think I said that before.
Might have been on a different podcast.
could well have been Jimbo. But I think if you look at like let's say if you do a who do you think you are kind of family tree of coaches, you'd have like you have Saki, you'd then have Pep, and you'd have Sarri all on the same tree. I think they're I think when Pep looks in the mirror, he sees Sarri, and I think it's the same kind of thing. They're very I think in terms of positioning and spacing, their kind of ideas of how teams should play are very, very similar. So I think it'll be a really exciting tie, that.
Okay, they're in a group. Oh, hello.
Sorry.
They're in a group with.
James has picked 5 or 6 different surprise teams across his various
It's going to be a real shock to
across
you this
various
season,
platforms.
Right. So Man City and Napoli are in a group with Feyenoord and Shakhtar. And we need to as well mention a couple of questions from people who took the time to write in. Mm-hmm. PMUK, Bayern had that year when they would have had the same end result if they played without a goalie. Will West Ham be the same this year? Nick Kin, if you could put one non-Premier League team into the Premier League, who would it be? Guest spot in the Premier League? Who would you give it to? Rafa?
Napoli?
Oh, nice one. James?
Celtic.
Nice.
Maybe Paris Saint-Germain. I feel there's less of a leap between France and England.
Okay, what kind of opposition, asked Adam James, will Atalanta pose for Everton in the Europa League?
Oof. Difficult, awkward, tricky opponent to face, even though they've lost half a team. I think Gasperini is a very underrated tactician. Coach of the Year, I think he'll get that award after what he did achieve there last season. So, yeah.
Okay. Eager Elephant, boy, this is a question. Are playmakers or trequartistas or number 10s still needed in the age of 4-3-3 pass and press? I.e., do Barcelona need Coutinho and indeed do Liverpool? That's a question for you, isn't it? Something that comes and goes, isn't it, the number 10? Do you remember when Baggio and Zola couldn't get into Parma because of this?
It really depends what kind of football you want to play. I mean, you want to be very direct. You want to hit your front man early. Then a number 10 spends a lot of time looking at balls going over his head, like, living under the Heathrow flight path. But a lot of teams want to have the ball and come up against teams that cede that space, and then you need that guy more than ever, because without his pass through, you're going nowhere half the time.
I think Isco showed last season that a number 10 is well worth having. And, he arguably was Real Madrid's best player in the last 3 months of last season. The reason, the thing is with him...
Playing as a number 10?
But yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, he was very different to an orthodox number 10 in the fact that he worked like a dog as well. Maybe that's the difference between your traditional number 10 who drift in and out of the game,
right,
and someone like him.
Just to remember that Deco at Porto under Mourinho played on the left side of midfield in a 4-4-2, but then whenever he had the ball, was a playmaker. He was allowed to go wherever he wanted, but he still had to be in a wide position, not lining up as a number 10. And I think that is still a little bit similar to to Isco's role at Real Madrid, where he deputised for one of the front three, but then held the ball and slowed things down like a playmaker would traditionally do.
Yeah, Ancelotti did that with Pastore at Paris Saint-Germain for a bit as well.
There you go. Guess it all depends what kind of music you want your team to play. Which brings us full circle nicely on this Totally Football show. It's been a broad-ranging discussion, and we could have kept on chatting for a long time yet, but that's where we got to leave it. We will be back on Monday with a bit of a recap on what's been happening in the international world of football and all sorts of other things too. For now, Andy Brassell, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rafa Honigstein.
What's my name?
Oh, no.
There's no umlaut on the O.
Now you tell me. And James...
Horncastle.
Yeah, nice one. Remember, game4grenfell.com to show your support for the big match at Loftus Road this Saturday. Do have yourselves a great international weekend. Enjoy all the lovely football, and we'll see you Monday.
The Totally Football Show is a Muddy Knees Media production. For sales and advertising, please email sales@muddykneesmedia.com and tweet us @The Totally Show.